been meaning to say this for a while. I don't like anything about you. We're gonna live as a family from now on, so get out of this house. Stop interfering in our lives. When I voiced my opinion to my son's wife, Tabitha, who was neglecting her responsibilities as a mother, she became visibly angry. Fuming, she stormed out of the living room, spewing aggressive words. I get it. Just so you know, the house is in my name. Let's change that. If it means cutting ties with you, I'd do it right now. Tabitha had wanted to sever ties with me. Oblivious, she happily accepted my agreement. She was too naive to realize what she was getting into. She had no idea that changing the house's title would lead to her downfall. This all happened before my grandson was even born. My name is Emily. I work as a CPA, and I'm a career-oriented woman. My family consists of just my son. My husband passed away from illness shortly after my son was born. He was a man of strong principles, and I was utterly devoted to him. When he died, I was devastated and even thought of ending my life. However, my son Lucas became my only treasure and gave me a reason to live. He's like a ray of sunshine, reminding me that I need to protect him. And that's what inspired me. My son had always been my rock. It wasn't that he did anything special for me, but his passionate cries for me, his mother, gave me the strength to keep going until today. Now he's a grown man, a member of society. He studied like mad, even landing a job at a big corporation. As a mother, I couldn't be prouder of how he's turned out. Then, when he was 26, he married Tabitha, his long-time girlfriend. They moved into a brand new house, and he began suggesting I should move in with them. Don't you think it'd be awkward if I lived with you? Newlyweds and all? Tabitha and my son came over. During our casual conversation, Tabitha answered my question. Actually, I was the one who asked Lucas. I really wanted to live with you. Tabitha, you're such a good person. Lucas is lucky to have you. Hey, Mom, don't overstep. Based on those heartfelt words from her, I was genuinely touched. Tabitha, a dependable person, is 6 years older than my son. As an older wife, her assertive, no-nonsense demeanor really won me over. But she was also considerate and pleasant. I had no worries about moving in with them. It seemed like it would be a bright and enjoyable life. So we began our life together. Everything was smooth sailing initially. However, things took a sudden turn. Soon after moving in, Tabitha got pregnant. We were all thrilled. Citing health reasons, Tabitha quit her part-time job, and she decided to be a homemaker, supporting the household. My son continued to work hard, and I also contributed while working. And then finally our grandson was born. We all thought, now let's give it our all as family. But then, my son got unexpected news. His company was expanding globally, and he had to go overseas to support a new branch for a few years. The timing couldn't have been worse. My son was heartbroken. I want to stay here. I still want to be with my kid. Despite his lament, off he went overseas. So that left the three of us, Tabitha, my grandson, and me. When my colleagues asked me if I wasn't uneasy about staying alone with my daughter-in-law, I never had such thoughts. With a kind Tabitha and a cute grandson, we could manage. Or so I thought, content. Little did I know, I'd regret that relief. Tabitha had been severely sick during her pregnancy and hadn't been able to do any housework. Luckily, I lived with them and took over the chores, but perhaps that was a mistake. Even after our grandson was born, Tabitha didn't lift a finger around the house. Worse, she would often spend her days aimlessly, not even properly looking after our grandson. Finally, I had to confront her. Tabitha, you're a mother now. Do you have any sense of responsibility? On that particular day, Tabitha was about to leave the house, leaving our grandson with me again. I stopped her at the entrance and took her to the living room for a serious chat. Don't I always look after him while you're not around? Can't I take a break sometimes? A break? You're out almost every night. I'm not a maid or a babysitter, you know. I get it. But hearing a baby cry all the time gets to you. Can't I have some freedom? I felt a surge of irritation at Tabitha's scoffing tone, but showing my emotions might only aggravate her more. This was a dangerous path. I couldn't even face my son, who trusted me with his home, if she decided to neglect her duties as a mother. Something had to change. Taking a deep breath, I calmed my emotions. Trying to sound reasonable, I carefully choose my words for Tabitha. Could you maybe go out a bit less often? I have a job too, you know. I can't afford to be out and about every day. I make my request as humbly as possible, attempting to find middle ground, but she just starts laughing at me. Don't act like your job is so draining. I'm the one who's tired from taking care of the child. You're living here because of me, so show some consideration. I later realized she never understood what my job as a CPA entailed. Although I'd explained it when she first joined the family, it seems she never really got it. Probably assumed it was some run-of-the-mill office gig. This conversation made it pretty clear she thought anyone could do my job. You should be thanking Lucas for even allowing you to live here, so please pull your weight a little. I don't have time to work. I raised an eyebrow at her comment as if she's the one bringing in the money. Our life is financed by my son, her husband. She probably thought otherwise. That was a big mistake. My son's income went straight into savings for our grandson, because I'd offered to support that. The day before going abroad, my son and I had a discussion. I'll cover your living expenses too, Mom. I declined my son's generous offer. Just living together was enough for me to be grateful. I'd handle all the costs, living expenses, mortgage, everything. I let him know that he should save his money for my grandson's future, but telling this to Tabitha might make her uncomfortable. So I had asked my son to keep this a secret. So in Tabitha's eyes, I was just a parasite, contributing nothing to the house and relying on my son. That's probably what she thought. As days went by, Tabitha's attitude became increasingly arrogant, and she started to look down on me more and more. Life went on like this, and by the time my grandson turned 3, I had entered my 50s and started to feel my body deteriorate. I was worried that if this lifestyle continued, I might hit my breaking point. Just when I was struggling with what to do, my son mentioned that his overseas assignment might be coming to an end soon. I'll be seeing you soon, so hang on, Dad's doing his best. My son would talk to his son daily with video calls. My grandson's development was slow at this point. He still struggled with speech. Despite that, he would lovingly express himself sometimes, uttering the word Papa or using gestures. Both my son and I were totally smitten with him. However, Tabitha seemed uninterested, always fiddling with her phone next to us. Talking about her issues with my son overseas was hard, so each day was filled with worries. Then, something happened. I got home late one day, too late to prepare dinner. I thought surely she'll take care of things just for today. As I parked my car, I could hear my grandson's crying from outside the house. I rushed inside to find the laundry undone. My grandson, still in his diaper, was scratching his bottom and crying for a change. Where was Tabitha? I looked around and spotted her lazily asleep on the living room sofa. I couldn't believe she'd sleep while our grandson was crying like that. In sharp contrast to my wailing grandson, Tabitha snored away, clearly deep in sleep. Stress and exhaustion from work had reached a breaking point, so I forcibly woke her up. Wake up! What are you doing? Stop yelling at me, you're too close. As I yanked the blanket off of her, Tabitha groaned and clicked her tongue. Stretching and yawning, she sat up lazily. Her lethargic demeanor really got under my skin, my own frustration reaching new heights. How could you sleep while the child is crying? I'm tired too, okay? Don't yell right after I wake up. I can hear you, you know. Tired? What are you tired from? You don't even do anything around the house. I'm taking care of the kid, aren't I? You don't know anything, so why are you acting like you're so great? Tabitha, clearly in a bad mood, glared at me and snapped her words. Feeling my clenched fist tighten even more with her attitude, I was about to retort. But then my grandson tugged at my pants, signaling that his diaper was uncomfortable. Snapping back to my senses, I decided to leave Tabitha be for now. I focused on changing my grandson's diaper. Sorry, buddy, I bet that felt itchy. I'll change you right away. My tone was night and day compared to how I spoke to Tabitha, soft and tender as I changed the diaper. Yet even after the diaper change, my grandson kept crying. Confused, I then remembered that Tabitha had been sleeping. Could it be you haven't eaten either? Not sure if my grandson would understand, I asked him anyway. It seems like my grandson is frustrated by his inability to speak, as his tears show no sign of stopping. However, in an earnest attempt to communicate his feelings, he rubs his little tummy in circles, making a gesture to indicate he's hungry. Angry but holding it back, I rushed to prepare some food. Once he was finally eating, he laughed innocently while watching TV. I finally felt at ease. I sat down and collapsed onto the table. Today had been exhausting. Why do I have to go through all this? It's all because she won't take care of the house or the kid. The forgotten anger surged back within me. To make matters worse, I heard Tabitha's voice coming from upstairs. Is this for dinner? There's no meat? She grimaced at the fish-centered meal and started complaining. Something snapped at me and I told her to sit down. We need to talk. Sit. Is this going to take long? I was about to go. Sit down now. I rarely raised my voice, but this time I yelled, causing Tabitha to flinch momentarily. Thankfully, my grandson was engrossed in TV and didn't notice. Tabitha reluctantly sat, complaining as she did, and I laid into her. I won't tell you to stop going out or to stay home all the time, but you've been exceedingly indifferent towards your child. Indifferent? That's a bit much. I'm not ignoring him. I was just tired and took a nap today. Being tired because you've been out at night, of course you'd be drained during the day. Why do I have to be lectured for just taking a small nap? Do you even realize the time? It's already 9 p.m. Sleeping is not an option right now. Well, it's done and there's nothing we can do about it. She had been quietly listening at first, but it was clear her patience was wearing thin. Her tone changed, and she began to glare and argue back. Do you even feel like a mother? He is your son, you know. Ah, enough! Stop nagging! Seems like Tabitha had had enough. She stood up abruptly, grabbing my belongings. Shoving them into my arms, she yelled at me. You know, I've wanted to say this for a while. I can't stand you. From now on, we're living as a family without you. Get out of this house and stop meddling in our lives. With that, she slammed the living room door and stormed out. Startled by the noise, my grandson looked anxious. He glanced towards the door and mumbled, Mama? Perhaps feeling vulnerable without his mother, my grandson came up to me. He looked up as if asking where his mom had gone. My heart ached at the sight. I hugged him and broke down. How did things end up this way? Even without Lucas, I thought I could hold this household together. Now I'm supposed to leave my grandson in the hands of someone like her? What should I do? Overwhelmed by regret and heartache, I had no choice but to surrender myself to the tears that flowed from my uncontrollable anger and pain. My grandson must have sensed my distress. He looked up with concern and wiped my tears. Gwen, it's okay, he said in his childlike language, patting my head. His small gesture gave me some comfort, but my tears wouldn't stop. Still, what matters is that he lives a happy life. I can't entrust him to someone so unreliable. I have to protect him. Resolved, I decided to take action. The next day, I called into work and took a day off to have another talk with Tabitha. What now? If this is about yesterday, I've had enough. Just leave, okay? She was clearly reluctant to even speak with me. As soon as I arrived, she let out a heavy sigh and took her seat, immediately throwing provocative words my way. All right, as you wish, I'll leave, I said. So you finally realize you're the problem, huh? She must have been surprised that I accepted her words without any argument. For a moment, her eyes widened. That expression quickly faded, replaced by a mocking tone. But just so you know, I'll need to transfer the house's deed to you first, I continued. Fine by me. If that's what it takes to get rid of you, let's do it now. I had offered the change of the house's title as a condition for moving out. Tabitha, clueless as ever, happily agreed. Hearing her agreement, I couldn't help but smirk. She was too naive to realize. She had no idea that this change in ownership would be the start of her troubles. I took her along as we switched everything from the government paperwork, insurance, to the home loan from my name to hers. Just as we finished all the name changes, my son came home right on cue. Lucas? Tabitha was stunned to see my son, and understandably so. I had told her he wouldn't be back for a while. It's been a long time, Tabitha. Why is Lucas here? What about the overseas office? Didn't I tell you? I was about to come back home soon. Actually, I had confided in my son the night before. He wasn't supposed to be back for a bit longer, but I was desperate, so I told him everything. I decided to stop pretending and be honest about what had been happening. To be truthful, I had given up on the idea that telling my son would make any difference. However, his boss at his new posting turned out to be a really good person. When I explained the situation at home, the boss immediately arranged everything for him to come back, from flights to logistics. So, while I bought time with the name changes, my son returned. We got to see each other before I completely left the house. Tabitha, you've done some terrible things to my mother and family. Just by seeing his face, she must have sensed it. He was furious. Tabitha was visibly shaking, and it was clear she was scared. What terrible things? I haven't done anything to your mother. Don't play dumb. I know everything. Even at this point, Tabitha tried to weasel her way out. Her futile resistance. As I had those thoughts, my son seemed to speak for me as he looked down at her with a big grin. Standing tall with his arms crossed, he exuded authority. The force he projected while looking down from his 6-foot height was overwhelmingly strong. Look, you've got it all wrong. Mother-in-law, you've never contributed financially, but you're always nagging. I've been stressed out with taking care of the kids and said things in the heat of the moment. I didn't mean anything by it. Tabitha tried to deflect the situation, even though she was visibly intimidated. My son must have really scared her. She kept talking, saying things that made me want to tell her that she should just stop for her own sake. By the time she was done, I was flabbergasted. Do you even realize how we've managed to make ends meet? You clearly have no idea. Upon hearing Tabitha's side, my son couldn't help but laugh as he continued to speak. Maybe he found her ignorance amusing, but he looked down on Tabitha, chuckling. Tabitha couldn't understand why she was being laughed at. Confused, she alternately looked at my son and me, trying to make sense of it all. Our living expenses come from my mom's income. What do you mean? I've been putting all my earnings in my mom's hands, saving up for our child. My son began to reveal how things had unfolded, and Tabitha, hearing it all for the first time, was visibly shaken. She probably had never considered that her entire lifestyle had been financially supported by me. She realized she'd made a huge mistake. It was as if her face said it all. Her emotions were completely transparent. Why do you think I had everything transferred to your name today? What? Tabitha looked perplexed by her husband's abrupt question, and from there he continued to corner her. You thought you'd successfully push Mom out of the house, didn't you? Caught off guard, she couldn't find the words to respond, perhaps finding her silence amusing. My son approached her with a sinister grin. The person who tirelessly held this family together wouldn't just leave because of your petty annoyances. But then why? It was my idea. As Tabitha eagerly attempted to interrupt, my son cut her off. What did you say? Why would you even suggest such a thing? Because if we didn't include changing the title and the conditions for her leaving, you might not have gone along with it. Why did the title need to change? We could just live as a family of 3 after driving her out. Could she still believe my son is on her side? Both my son and I were shocked at Tabitha's statement. He couldn't help but burst into laughter. Come on, let's limit the jokes to your face. The idea of you, me, and her living together, absurd. But why would the title of the house also become mine? To divorce you, obviously. Saying that, he thrust the divorce papers at her. Startled, she nearly fell backward. Though she managed to steady herself, her face turned ghostly white as she looked at the divorce papers. You could clearly see her mind going blank. There's no way I could leave this child and my mother in your care. Continuing as a married couple is utterly impossible. Well, wait, this is totally unreasonable. Unreasonable? You're the one using that word? Reflect on what you've done to my mother. At the word unreasonable, my son's anger exploded. My son yelled at her, channeling all the anger he had ever felt. You were a mistake. I should have never trusted you with my mom and our kid. From now on, I'm the one who'll protect them. We're done as of today. But my savings belong to me. Perhaps realizing she couldn't push any further, Tabitha shifted her focus to the money. She began demanding my son's assets in the divorce settlement. I couldn't help but sigh at her audacity. I decided to explain why I had been covering their living expenses. Why do you think I've been paying for living expenses while Lucas saved his money? What? All the accounts under my grandson's name were set up by me. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Clearly, Tabitha was perplexed. In a divorce, child savings can sometimes be considered marital assets. I had accepted living expenses from my son and saved it as a gift for my grandson to prevent this. This way, even if you divorce, you won't get your hands on my grandson's savings or my son's savings. So you're really not going to get much. This can't be. It wasn't that I planned this in case of divorce, but it sure came in handy. I couldn't help but pat myself on the back. Tabitha fell right into our trap. She sank to the floor, realizing her world was crumbling around her. I bet you only married me for my money, didn't you? My son added more fuel to the fire. That's not true. Oh, isn't it? I know all about your affairs. Your flings have already confessed everything. You're lying. Tabitha looked shocked and I sighed. How could we not suspect you when you were out every night? We've got all the evidence. Your affair partners even confessed. When I showed her the voice recorder and some photos of her entering a hotel, Tabitha had nothing more to say. Turns out she reconnected with an old flame after marrying my son. She was cheating and funneling money into this man. But you miscalculated big time. My salary doesn't even come close to what Mom earns. You mean your mom, the office worker? How could she possibly earn more money than you, Lucas? The income of a CPA grows with experience. So what? She's making like 100,000. 100,000? Tabitha was flabbergasted when she heard my salary. Don't regret your ignorance now. My mom isn't someone you can look down on. But if I just work harder, I could... Tabitha! I cut her off. I couldn't stand listening to her any longer and intervened. No matter how much you cry or scream, you can't change the facts. Stop making a fool of yourself. After hearing that, she bit her lower lip, a look of regret on her face. Then, through tears, she begged my son, anything but divorce, probably realizing it's tough for a jobless 35-year-old woman to start over. She was desperately appealing to my son for some sort of lifeline. But my family-oriented son wasn't about to let her off the hook. You're gonna pay for this, he said. And he did just that. He filed for divorce, mediation against her unwillingness, and he made claims for emotional damages I had suffered, and even for child neglect concerning our grandson. Thanks to that, she found herself buried in debt. With a home loan still to pay, it seemed she had no choice but to declare bankruptcy. I'm not sure what happened to her after that, but rumor has it she's scraping by on TANF. Time has passed, and now I'm 76 years old. I'm living with my son and grandson, and this spring, my grandson is getting married. I'm marrying a woman who's strong and kind, just like you, Grandma, he told me, his face breaking into a shy smile. Seeing my grown-up grandson, tears flowed down my cheeks as I wished for their continued happiness.